Overthinkers of Reddit, what unlikely scenario actually came true that you were completely prepared for because you are an overthinker? My boyfriend, who has zero history of seizures, narrowly escaped dying from one because my overthinking led me to break into his house when he didn't answer the phone. My overthinking had begun a few nights prior. He mentioned that he bit his tongue in his sleep and woke up with a bloody pillow and sore mouth, but he had no memory of it happening. That for some reason led my overthinking brain to question, wow, did he have a seizure and not realize that he has zero history of seizures, and we had been together multiple years, didn't live together but spent nights together, and I had never seen a hint of a seizure, but for some reason, this stuck in my mind. Fast forward 2 days, we usually don't hang out in the morning because he likes to sleep in late, but on this day we had an appointment to go see a specific dog at the shelter I was thinking of adopting. He wouldn't answer the phone that morning. I called multiple times before I went to his place, but he never picked up. I started getting a bad feeling but quelled the he's having a seizure thought, because that was clearly so unlikely. Meanwhile, making an action plan for that very scenario. I got to his house and he wouldn't answer, so in a completely not me crazy girlfriend move, I climbed over his fence. Luckily his door was unlocked. I found him unconscious and unresponsive, lying in his back with the sticky remnants of foam all around his mouth. I jumped into action. I rolled him on his side to help curb aspiration, put a pillow under his shoulder to keep him in that position, and called the ambulance. Had I not hopped the fence to get in, had I not driven over when he didn't pick up the phone, had we not had plans to meet up hours earlier than we usually did, he would have been dead by lunch. His kidneys were already shutting down by the time he reached the air. If he had never mentioned biting his tongue in his sleep, I don't think I would have been overthinking at all. No crazy worries about seizures would have pushed me to go over and find him. Turns out to be a weird brain disease that's bizarrely endemic to New Mexico, kind of cerebral cavernous malformations. Several days later, after we got home from the hospital, I got a call from a friend who said the dog, against all odds, was still at the shelter, as in the very dog we were supposed to be seeing that day. I had given up hope on getting her, pushed it out of my priorities while he was hospitalized, but they had forgotten to take down my 24 hours old sign on her cage, so no one inquired about her. She's now our miracle dog and is the sweetest animal I've ever owned. My boyfriend wouldn't be alive today if we hadn't made an appointment to meet her. Not me, but my mother. Apparently at a party where my parents and their friends were playing board games, there was a realization that an hourglass was missing from one of the games they planned on playing. My mother proceeded to reach into her purse and pull out an hourglass she just so happened to bring, on the off chance they didn't have one. However, later in the night when some drinks had been had, someone accidentally slammed a drink down, breaking my mother's hourglass. Without missing a beat, she reached into her purse and pulled out another hourglass. She knew the first one, being glass, might get broken, so she had a backup ready. Now this is dedication to game night, LOL. I didn't actually plan for this, it just worked out. But one day for some reason I put a suction cup in my pocket. I can't exactly remember why. It was from a shower hook that I think broke, and I put it in my pocket hoping to find a replacement or something. Later that day I was standing around with a few friends and one friend was lamenting that his bumper was dented. He showed us and said, "I bet I could pop it right out if I had like a suction cup or something." I wordlessly pulled the suction cup out of my pocket and handed it to him. Everyone definitely thought I was creepy as heck. This was at 9 years old. We had driven home and seen the beginning wisps of smoke for the California Cedar Fire in 2003. Naturally, I assumed the worst, and packed up all my clothes and spent about an hour making a travel cage for my guinea pigs. I tied their water bottle to the side so they could drink, packed up their food and their favorite furniture just in case. I then spent the next few hours monitoring the fire on the news and out in the distance from our window, periodically asking my parents if we needed to evacuate. At some point in the night the fire sped up like crazy and was literally on the hillside across the street. I went into my parents' room and said, "The fire is across the street, are you sure we shouldn't evacuate?" At this point we all went crazy grabbing important documents and supplies, and as we were about to lock the doors and drive I realized I forgot my guinea pigs. My parents told me it was too late and I didn't have time to grab them, But when I cried and explained I had them packed up, I was able to grab them and go. The house ended up okay thanks to a neighbor putting out embers before they took. But we were gone long enough my pigs wouldn't have made it. TLDR. Helped save my family and pets from a fire because I was an anxious child. One time, I overthought to concern I had a round drive and fire. When the time came that we had a clog, didn't know, and there was a wee burst of flames I was freaking ready. I cleaned the lint trap religiously. I just had a gut feeling. I buy one of those things from Amazon to clean it and nothing came out, so don't let that fool you. If your drying times are up and there's sometimes a smell, call someone or check every possible location. We found basically Brillo pads of burnt hair inside the heating element. Stay safe pals. Did you just sit next to it waiting for it to burn? I carry scissors in my glove compartment. They came in handy when a kid tightened a skinny zip tie around my 9-year-old's finger at a park. Completely cut off the circulation. Also the other kid's mom was a nurse, so that was helpful too. Carry scissors and a nurse at all times. Ah crap, I forgot to pack my nurse. I bought and learned to use a Slim Jim, open locked cars. I carry one in my car and have been able to help no less than 10 people who have locked their keys in their car. My brother was visiting me from out of town and he needs something from Target. He called me and said an elderly man had locked his keys in his car and I was able to drive over and help. Also have jumper cables that have helped start a few stranded drivers. That's really nice of you. When my son was still a baby, we had to take an 11-hour flight. As an overthinker, I brought at least 25 diapers for him to go through. He didn't need that many, but the mom sitting close to us was very grateful when she ran out of diapers not even halfway through the flight and I gave her a few. You are a savior. Me and my wife always have tons in our diaper bag. Our son is only a month old, but he's a monster and a change can sometimes involve 4 or 5 diapers. I've never told anyone this, but when I was in middle school and going through puberty, I used to be terrified of getting a random boner and my fly being down accidentally. Like, I would be up in front of class and then randomly get an erection and it would just pop out of my fly, in front of the whole class, lol. It's making me laugh just typing this out. You know that episode of South Park where Jimmy keeps getting random stiffies? That was basically my life. Usually I would just tuck it in my waistband and wait for the storm to settle, but I still had the huge fear of it popping out of my fly because I forgot to zip it up. So what did I do? I started wearing my boxers backwards so that even if I forgot to zip up my fly, my schlong wouldn't be exposed. It was a pain to use the urinals, but honestly I got used to it pretty quickly. Flash forward a couple months and I was at the movies with a big gathering of people. It was basically a big group of girls and my group of guy friends. Each guy and girl paired up and made sure to sit next to each other. I was paired with the girl I had a huge crush on. We shared a popcorn and soda and it was a huge moment for me. Briefly into the movie, I got one of those dang random boners and I quickly but discreetly stood up and did the ol' waistband tuck. When I sat back down, I could feel it pop out through my zipper. Thankfully, my backwards boxers kept it from saying hello to my date, but I still panicked and had to cover up in hurry. She noticed, but I think we can all agree that a 6th grade boy's erect penis hiding under a layer of underwear is better than just sprouting out bare in the middle of a crowded movie theater. Also, she never said anything to her friends about it. Shout out Stephanie for not mocking me with her friends. I carry a fire extinguisher in my auto. I witnessed a car accident where the engine caught fire. I quickly put it out before it burned the inside of the car. Everyone survived. Went through a stage as a teenager where I thought I was psychic. I know, stupid. A friend asked me jokingly to make a prediction. I told him to get a flashlight, because tomorrow would be dark. I grabbed one myself when I got home and put it in my purse. No idea why, just did it. The next day the Eastern Seaboard blackouts happened. He still asks for predictions to this day. I always keep an open deck of cards in my backpack. You never can tell when some hold'em may be needed to pass the time. But when I was at a business conference, the bigwig who was presenting to us was having to wing it with a few things because his luggage had been lost, and he didn't have all of his materials. He had the PowerPoint deck, but he didn't have his props. He started going into explaining how he'd be able to demonstrate this statistical principle he was describing, only he didn't have the unopened deck of cards he needed. Voila! I was able to produce a shrink-wrapped deck of cards. My boss was also in the same presentation, and he was also impressed that I just happened to have a deck of cards on me, so that's nice, too. In college, on occasion, upperclassmen would randomly steal the underclassmen towels from the shower stalls and then lock their room doors, so they had to go to the bar acid. I had the idea to stash a towel in the drop shielding tiles for just that event. Maybe a week later I became the victim of a towel snatching. However, the upperclassmen were very unhappy to see me strut out with a nice clean towel from my shielding stash. Something similar happened to me at my sorority house, but I just showered for a really long time till they got tired of waiting. I sang and sang and sang. They were my friends and they knew I didn't mind being naked. Getting lost in a foreign country, relying on phone GPS to navigate, data stops working, had over-prepared and memorized the map of the downtown area ahead of time. You can download areas on Google Maps beforehand. It's super useful when traveling abroad. I am an amateur clarinetist. I've played in the local orchestra and the like. My son was in the high school band, also played clarinet. Prior to a football game, at the warm-up area, he called me as I was about to head to the game, saying that someone in his section had a problem with their instrument. So did I have a loner? Now the thing about being a clarinet player is that everyone you know calls you every time they see a cheap plastic clarinet for sale at a garage sale or the like. So over the years, especially when my son was in junior and senior high, when I saw one of these for $50 or $100 I grabbed it. It didn't happen every day, but at the peak of my collection I had a couple of beta plastic clarinets in addition to the pretty good wooden one my son played. And Lord knows I wouldn't trust anyone with my good clarinets in BB&A I used in the orchestra. So I grabbed both of these plastic jobs, which actually played okay, and brought them. I pulled the one I thought was the better of the two out of the car and gave it to my son's friend. Meanwhile, he says, hey, another person ran into a problem, and I got the second clarinet out of the car. How many clarinets do you have, was my son's question. It was a proud moment. I've noticed a trend amongst some musicians to just slowly accumulate instruments. I has a friend with a couple acoustic guitars, a couple electric guitars, a pretty nice bass, a frankly unsettling number of banjos and ukuleles, and by far the largest gong I've ever personally seen. I am basically blind without my glasses, and I've always taken a backup pair of glasses when I travel. It went untouched for years, taking up valuable space in my luggage. Lo and behold, one trip to Montreal a few years ago I just woke up one morning to find my glasses broken. No idea how it happened, and I finally got a chance to break out my backup pair. I use both contacts and glasses. I keep spare contacts in the glove box, my toiletry kit and day bag when traveling. Nothing sucks more than being out and losing vision. When I was 11, I always kept approximately 12 to 15 of some combination of pens, pencils, and markers in my pant pocket. Just liked having options and never knew what I was going to need to write on. Sometimes got some side eye from other kids though. Cut 2. At a weekend camp with a bunch of kids, I'm participating in a sort of scavenger hunt race thing. At one point our teams hits this task where everyone has to draw or write something. Don't really remember, but there's only 2 pens, about 10 people per team, and another team just showed up, with 1 pen assigned to each team. It's going slow, until you get a pen. You get a pen. Everybody gets a pen. Our team screams through the task because we can all write simultaneously, while the other team's left plodding along with their 1 pen. We eventually win. Who's weird now? I was supposed to get married at the end of May last year. At the beginning of the year, before any of the pandemic stuff happened, I became obsessed with thinking about all the things that could go wrong and how we would lose our money spent on the event. As a result, I purchased a very high coverage insurance policy for the event. As luck would have it, this type of insurance had no clause that prevented collecting if there was a pandemic. We got all of our money back. As a should have been 2020 bride who opted out of wedding insurance because only an apocalypse would keep me from this wedding, I can say that was very smart of you. Injuring my dominant hand. As a kid I had an irrational fear of having it chopped off. I spent all of grade 6 teaching myself to write and do things with my left hand. I made a conscious effort to remain as ambidextrous as possible. As an adult I broke a few fingers on my dominant hand. But it wasn't a big issue because I could do most things equally with my left hand. Anticlimactic, but it was useful lol. Have the exact same fear and have been working on training my left hand occasionally. I'm also trying to learn to echoloket in case I go blind. I found a nickel-sized lump on my 15-month-old daughter's temple, freaked out, obsessed over it, researched it exhaustively, and concluded it was a dermoid cyst that had worn through the skull. I was told by a pediatrician that it was a bone bruise that would fix itself over the course of 3 to 6 months. No imaging was needed, and I shouldn't make an appointment at the children's hospital because it would resolve on its own. I got an x-ray done anyway and the radiologist confirmed every one of my suspicions. But the pediatrician still said to wait and see because that's what you do with dermoid cysts and it was definitely not through the skull despite what the radiologist said. Made an appointment at the hospital anyway, and the surgeon swore up and down that although it was a dermoid cyst as I'd suspected, it would not be through the skull since in all his years of practice it never had been. Well, guess what? It was through the skull, and it was pressing on the membrane between the skull and the brain. A hair's breadth from breaking the membrane or pressing on the brain. A couple more weeks of waiting and my daughter could have had seizures, a brain infection, lasting damage. I overthought it and now she's a happy, healthy 3-year-old. Being a parent sounds so terrifying. Happy for your daughter, though. Nice work. All the teachers at the middle school I taught at knew I was a pack rat and one day a kid split his pants and the school counselor came to me and said, "Mr. Hogdog, would you happen to have a pair of sweats or gym pants in your truck?" Yep. So that the kid spent the rest of the day in a pair of nylon pants I had behind my seat. He is lucky because if he didn't fit he would have spent the rest of the day in a white disposable coverall I had in case I had car trouble in nice clothes. Icing on the cake, it was a student I really liked who was super helpful to other kids and teachers. So it was nice to do something nice for him. I also carried a Swiss Army brand soft side briefcase, yard sale find, stuffed and it had a few of each size of battery. One day Phil Necro and 2 Braves players were there for an assembly and Phil's mic battery was dying so I sprinted upstairs to my classroom, grabbed a 9V from my bag, then basically rolled across the panel and switched out his battery and got back to the PA avoiding getting on TV news cameras. The death of a family member. OCD, when overthinking turns into repeatedly mourning for family who are still alive, because how would I feel if I never get to see them again? This is actually a concept that dates back to Stoicism called negative visualization. I used to live out of my backpack, and I always thought I'd need to leave town, so I kept just about everything in there you could ever need. Oftentimes I'd end up having to stay somewhere without much notice, and I'd have a change of clothes, face wash, toothbrush, toothpaste, scissors, floss, phone charger, money, snacks, etc. Enough to cover me for at least 2 days without actually needing to go home. I hope you're in a better place now and able to have some security. I'm Asian, so my default is to overthink, especially when I'm on a field trip, holiday, etc. Essentially it's just what if I need X, Y, Z just in case. One time, while I was living in another sea country, I went on a middle school field trip with my, mostly white, classmates. Side note, in most sea public bathrooms, bidets are the norm, toilet paper is not. But in this particular country, even the bidets are not encouraged to be used. So toilet paper is a luxury during trips. At the hotel we stayed at, my classmates made fun of me for taking 3 rolls of toilet paper from the hotel's bathroom. They were embarrassed and reported me to the teacher in charge, who told them off for wasting her time. I told them they were going to regret laughing at me but they continued to mock me for overthinking. Cue to the bus trip back and a couple of them had diarrhea and guess who was the only one able to provide enough toilet paper? You bet your butt I made them pay me for toilet paper. A square cause, frick you guys for laughing at me. I was once driving on the highway behind a car with a couple of kayaks strapped to the roof. My anxious brain kept saying what if they fall off the car? Final Destination style, I tried to convince myself that it was an irrational fear, but the anxiety got the better of me and I decided to change lanes and make some distance. About 30 seconds later, cue kayaks. They both slip off the roof and go rolling around the highway. Luckily no one was hurt, but man, that did not help my anxiety at all. I definitely do the Final Destination worries thing too. Usually a big truck piled with giant logs or something. You wonder if some part of you unconsciously registered that the kayaks had been shifting some way. I've read that your body can pick up subtle signs of impending doom in various ways that can make you afraid even if you're not sure why. What would I do if my neighbor's house caught on fire? I said I'd make sure my kids were safe and panic, and then we'd run if the fire got close. My neighbor's house caught on fire and I sat outside and watched it with my kids and panicked. This is the most real response. We can overthink everything and lose sleep whatever, but when reality strikes you are only reacting. Now you know how you actually react in that situation and I'm sure you're now overthinking your next strategy lol. I work in childcare and was working at a center that was so draining. I started applying for new jobs and went on a couple interviews. One time, I had an interview with another daycare and was offered the position. I loved my co-workers and ultimately decided to turn the new position down. However, I had this gut feeling that I couldn't burn any bridges in case crap at my current job hit the fan. So when I turned down the new job, I made up an excuse saying I'd love to take the offer but couldn't because of this reason but would be in the touch sometime in the future. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, crap hit the fan at my work. I took a month off and then emailed the job that offered me a position and started 2 weeks later. I missed an interview when I had COVID. Now the company won't even look at my applications. Even after I explained the situation, they won't consider me, which I guess is fair since it is their choice. I had a feeling my entire pregnancy that my daughter would be early. She was due the 21st of July and I somehow felt like she would arrive before Father's Day. Bought my husband a pink tie to put her footprints on for his first Father's Day gift. Had my hospital bag packed and car seat installed early. Had a boy jump from a bookcase onto my belly while I was teaching pre-K, which tore an abdominal muscle, triggered early labor, and my daughter arrived the 9th of June via emergency C-section. No way I could have known, but I prepared. When I had a tumor removed a couple years ago I kept the surgical blow vomit bag thing they gave me just in case, in my car in case anyone ever got sick while I'm driving. Last winter I was on a third date, driving on the highway back home with her, and she was feeling like she was going to throw up. Could not find the blue vomit bag. Felt dumb telling her where to look when it was in my center console all along. She ended up ralphing in a grocery bag that luckily didn't break. Overthought and forgot. I was on a flight back from Asia and the whole plane was Sanrio themed. So I took 2 of the cute pink bath bags that had Hello Kitty on them and put them in my car too. It's a weird thing to make so cute, but they thought of everything. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.